and then she will sorry about that. I just got the
You're good.
Alrighty. Well, hello everyone. Welcome. I am Mark Holder. I am the Touchpoint Account Manager. I really appreciate you joining today and spending your Friday afternoon with us. Very excited to introduce you to Karen Montgomery, our guest speaker hosting this webinar. Karen, she's a children's author, a registered play and trauma therapist. She's level 2 certified in EMDR, but she's also human and a mother of 3. She's a huge storyteller. It means that her clients teach her just as much as she teaches them. She's very big on coordination of care, collaboration, and creating community. Today, she's very excited to share with you the power of menus in supporting mental health. Karen, I'll let you take it from here.
Okay, well, thank you for having me. I have to say that touch points have been lifesavers for so many of my clients, and I'll get into kind of how that pairs with my passion for wanting to really do this. Over in Kansas City, it's a dark, dreary day, but we're gonna have some fun. I'm all about speaking to the room. So if there are things that we're talking about that you already know, or things that we're not talking about, feel free to message. I can pivot. This is for you guys. And I think that it's just so wonderful that we're taking advantage of Mental Health Awareness Month. Particularly, it's needed this year more than ever, and I think that need is going to continue to grow. I think that a lot of people have been shocked by the climbing numbers, and a lot of people assume it has a lot to do with the pandemic, but it was starting in emotion well before the pandemic. I think the pandemic just really served as a catalyst to speed up the negative impact of a lot of social media and just other things that have been going on. But it was definitely a trend that was booming. And today, my hope is that I can give you guys easy to use, non-intimidating tools to help you reduce, anxiety or distress and just conflict in general with your children, and create more calm through the use of the power of menus. And so hopefully we can start to fill in a little bit of this gap in knowledge. My big thing I like to tell parents all the time is, this is a generation where these kids they were forced to kind of learn a little bit more. They've been exposed to more, but they're also an incredibly nurturing and open generation. And so it's our job to kind of catch up. We were raised differently. And so I do think a lot of times parents feel guilty for not knowing. And, as my dad taught me when I was younger, it's easy when you know how, and you can't know what you haven't been taught. And so that's really where I see this going, as creating a common language. And there's no guilt. I only know this is my one lane because it's my passion. But if it hadn't been, then I probably wouldn't be as skilled at it. So we're just so glad you're here. And I'm also so glad that neuroscience is helping us realize this is no longer just some kind of woo-woo ideas, but really it is something that is scientific. All right. So understanding the neuroscience behind menus. So when I talk about reducing the gap in knowledge and helping us keep up with our kids, I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that none of us have really been taught about the brain, or we have an old school mentality. So I'd love to just start off by briefly explaining some things about the brain that will then help you understand why menus and touch points have the success that they do have. Our brain is actually a bottom-up process, and it used to be taught that it was top-down, and that's why when someone was upset, you were supposed to talk to them. And we know that that didn't always result in a lot of good things. I know when my kids are upset, if I ask questions, it usually escalates things. So I'd love for people to understand even just this basic Dan Siegel hand model. I don't know if you guys can see me with my hand, but knowing that what it means to have the brain be a bottom-up process is this is the most archaic part of our brain. It's our brainstem. And this is all the stuff that happens automatically. Stuff we don't have to think about, like breathing, our heart beating. Folded in, we have this tiny little almond-shaped thing called our amygdala. And it has a big name for a reason, because it's like our powerhouse of safety, but also wreaking havoc on our nervous system and our prolonged states of stress. And we have memories here, and it's really awesome, but super overprotective. So if there's anything slightly that makes us think we're in danger that comes automatically from our brainstem, it can sound the alarm. When you fold it over, this is actually where our prefrontal cortex is. And that's that thinking, reasoning part of your brain, the executive functioning that actually helps us to problem solve. But when our amygdala goes off, we lose the ability. And so I think it's so important for parents, teachers, everyone to understand that a kid that may look like they're being defiant has literally lost their ability to understand and reason. And so I think knowing that, and how that works, and how a lot of times from our brainstem, it receives this input that's automatic, and it's the most reactive part of our brain, but it's the first part of our brain where data comes from. And so when we can understand the certain situations that may make our children more nervous, we can be better prepared. And so I think it is just really helpful for parents to have that language, and really it's just a common way to speak to one another, and a way to understand yourself, even if you start to get upset when your child is acting in a way that you may be triggered. So understanding the system and the purpose of feelings and emotions really helps us to be more prepared, less afraid, and feel like we're not the only one. When we feel like we're the only one, I would say our default is to assume something bad is going to happen. So when we bring in menus, it really helps bring our brain back online, which touch points are meant to do the same thing. When we're in that fight or flight system and we are kind of in this unreasonable space and we're getting really frustrated, menus provide a small way to say, okay, here are just a few things that we can look at that we know in advance are helpful for you, because you can't access that thinking, reasoning part of your brain. It's also a great way for kids to say, this is what's going on, because half the time we don't know what's going on, and it's really hard to fix something that we don't have knowledge about, and we get stuck in that system. But we get to teach our kids that we have this superpower called neuroplasticity, and that's where touch points and menus come in and make magic happen, because it's able to take us out of that fight or flight and let us get to a place where we can get needs met and feel more in control of our body and just the fight or flight system in general. And we can get to calming and logic. So menus serve many, many purposes. So one of the things I love to do, I have noticed from my job, when people say, how do you conduct therapy? And I say, well, it just depends, because everyone's different. And so by using menus and creating your own, you can meet the needs of your child. You can say, what are the situations where you're likely to be dysregulated? What feelings are really hard for you to identify and show? And so you can make cards. I like to make them on Canva. You print them out, you laminate them, and they can have their own cards. Because if you ask your kid, what's wrong? A lot of the times they look at you like, I have no idea. But if you hand them a stack of cards that says, I'm feeling stuck, or I feel alone, or I feel like I should have done something, they can show you their entire world. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that it creates a safe distance. And when we are overwhelmed, one, we can't find the words, or we may not have them yet. And two, it is a very intimate thing to try to show your inner world when you are dysregulated. So having those touch points offer almost immediate calm to your nervous system, in conjunction with having these things planned out, will make everyone's day so much less stressful. And I think all parents can agree that things are incredibly stressful right now. And so having anything in preparation of, okay, I know that we have a hard time after school. These are the 3 things that help, and they can be on a menu. Or when we have a test at school, this is something that's really difficult for me. Menus really allow children to feel seen and heard. And I think that they give adults a lot of sympathy too, because it's hard to feel, it's hard not to be frustrated when you don't know what's going on. But when you know someone is struggling and they can kind of give you the how and why, it's amazing how much more compassionate we can be. And then they can catch our calm and our confidence in them. So I absolutely love creating menus. This is just an example of one. Everyone's are different, but I also love it has anxiety on there. And it's one of those things where I love to teach kids that it's anxiety is not bad. It's just our relationship with it. So what are the boss backs? And we'll get to that with in terms of menus where you can figure out what are the negative dialogues going along, or by teaching kids about the how and the why, they may understand that physiologically my body feels like something really bad's going to happen, but I can look at this card to focus on facts and not feelings when my brain is hijacked. And so menus they kind of serve as a roadmap for when our brains get hijacked, and they get hijacked all the time. And sometimes we don't know why, and sometimes we do, but it's important to be able to just have something tangible that you can look at. And I think then you can go back to it, and the people around you can look at it too and realize, okay, these are some helpful things. And what may be best one day isn't the next. And so having the ability to choose too many choices, I think, is very overwhelming, especially for someone that's anxious or already struggling with executive functioning skills, with just ADHD or anxiety, depression, any of those things. And we'll go to a couple other examples. So these are some boss backs that I absolutely love, because anxiety is one of the most creative things. And quite often, most of what we worry about is just imaginary and never comes true. But our thoughts really form from the data we collect. And so if they're looking at just the outside of every other kid, they're thinking, well, they're perfect, they're happy. So boss backs are kind of my way of saying, like, oh, just because they look happy doesn't mean that they are. And what you see on social media isn't always as it appears, or, using your emotions. If you leave a situation and you feel yucky, it might be your body's way of saying those aren't your people. So I love to tailor those to specific running dialogues that kind of get stuck in. And that's a fun way to create your own menus for kiddos that have certain thoughts, because it may be with me, I fit in. It could be, I'm afraid something bad's going to happen. And then you might want to say, well, these are the things that I can know that I'm safe with. And then, like I said, pairing those with the touch points just helps your brain really create those new neuronal networks, so that the more you do this, the easier it gets. And the idea is that it will become a lot more automatic, instead of being kind of just stuck in the suck, I like to call it. And so these are just some additional boss backs that I love for people to put on the back, and kind of, I can find my brave. I love using the touch points with finding my brave and some cards to help you determine, okay, what do I need to be just a little bit stronger next time? And so sometimes what I have people do is I totem cards, they're different quality cards, or using cards. I'll share all of those with you guys. But imagining having those and building those skills while using the touch points. So you're kind of growing those networks before it even happens, and giving yourself that confidence. And not only can your kids catch your calm and your confidence, but we can actually grow the confidence by using touch points and by using menus that focus on the things that are maybe going well, or not so overwhelming. So I also love for kids to know this is my body doing what healthy bodies do. And it's just an overdrive, because when you don't know that what's happening is actually safe, it is terrifying. And so just these little reminders, I think, can really help when you're in a state of absolute panic. And like I said, they'll be different for everyone. And I think the key is not to have too many things. This is just a list for people to get ideas, but I like to keep things to 2 to 3 points, because when your brain's been hijacked, a big list is going to make you freeze even more. So this is just another example of kind of tailoring menus to a kiddo that you have, or your own kid. When they have a negative thought, they tend to, really not be able to let go of it. So it's, let your mind know that our brains are hardwired to want to notice the negative more, but like, I can shift this to a positive. And the more I practice, the better at it I'm going to get. And to think of one thing that's going well, or, talk to yourself the way you would a friend, instead of saying, I'm not good at this, I just can't. Just little reminders. So these are, and I love to laminate them. You can get as creative as you want. Sometimes people want them really tiny. Sometimes they want them bigger. Go to the next. And so these are just some more examples. A lot of times kids focus on, oh, this is the worst day ever. I can't control anything. So it's okay, well, what can you control on one side? So that they remember, or what are the body signals that are my body's trying to tell me I'm getting into this state, so then I get to decide whether it's a false alarm or not. What are the ways that my body tells me? And like, what feeds your anxiety? What makes it worse? I love for kids to have even cards where they remind themselves to have a time limit on how long they're going to talk about their worry, because talking and acknowledging is good, but over fixating feeds the beast, and then ignoring feeds the beast. And that's when our body kicks in and things feel really scary. So another place where touch points can be helpful, but just knowing in advance, these are things that tend to get me, so I can be prepared instead of taken by surprise and thinking, I don't know how to manage this. It's a way for scaffolding and to help build confidence by having these tangible tools, I think. So these are some examples that I use in my clinical practice. And I will tell you, when I ask even an adult, I see ages 4 to 70. What is it that happens in your body? Or what are the negative beliefs that keep you stuck and unable to move forward? And they usually can't tell me. But when I hand them decks of cards, this is what I get. And I will tell you, from the pandemic, it went from usually about 10 cards to sometimes I have people pick about 60. But the most beautiful part is I get to say, okay, so if this is a deck of cards that they sell, that means they're normal, right? And they're like, yeah, other people feel this way. I'm like, yeah, that's why it's on a card. So it's so helpful to normalize, but also to help you get to the root of what is that belief that's blocking you from having success. And I think as a parent, it's really frustrating when we don't know where they are internally and we can't figure out how to help them. So it's useful in so many different ways. But I find that it is just incredible at school and in practice. It can help you set goals. It can help you identify, what are your strengths? What do I need to work on? What do I want to work on? And I think the key is that buy-in. Our kids want to know the how and why, or they're not very motivated to do this. They're like, okay, this is just another lame idea that's not going to work. So this is another game that I absolutely love, and it's Totem. And I love having kids pick 10 cards from each pile. There's like a quality pile and an animal pile, and they have different qualities on them. And I think that it's so awesome to see what they think are their superpowers. And you can also have them create, okay, so what's something that you would want in a good friend? And how do we find people that fit these things? But I also think not only does it help identify our strengths, but it identifies our weaknesses and how we have to really harness a strength. Like, if one of your strengths is that you're tidy and well organized, how can that get you in trouble? Like, if you feel like you have to police the people around you in order to, keep this as one of your primary qualities, then, people might not be around as much. Or, it's great to, follow the plan perfectly. But if you wait for perfect, how do we get to that part of accepting, life throws us curveballs? So it's just a really good talking point. You can play this game in any number of ways. You can have family members make them of the qualities that they see in each other. I've never played it the way you're supposed to, but I imagine that would probably be a good way to play too. But just, you can use it in any way to try to find deeper meaning, or, like I said, figure out those qualities that could be really helpful, but we just don't quite know how to use them, and turn them into our gifts. So I don't know how much time we have left. I could talk obviously for hours, but I don't want to do that. But I wanted to make sure that people had a chance to ask questions, and I'm happy to send over lists of, favorite menu items. I do love even pairing a lot of these cards with the touch points. One of my favorite right now, I love these feelings flashcards for any age, but the mindfulness card for kids, I love that they have ones that focus on calm, focus, reconnecting, and responding, because so often we're responding from that archaic part of our brain where we're reacting and not responding. And when you pair those, we're creating all these amazing neuronal networks. So I can show different cards. I can answer questions. I know this is like a very fast topic that I could have talked for hours on. Anybody have questions specifically with their kiddos or ways to use them? Or would you guys like to see more examples?
You are also welcome to write it in the chat if that's easier for you.
Yeah.
We will be monitoring the chat
Until
as well.
people write questions, the other ones I love are these values cards. I love to help people pick out their core values and then see, is this matching that, or is that why I feel a little bit off? Mila Marks is another amazing resource that's online, and they have a bunch of free downloadables. And so menus can be card decks, they can be worksheets, just anything that help give kids a list to choose from, and adults. And then so there are a ton on there that are very, very helpful. For example, this is one of them, and helping identify, okay, what are those signals in my body where I'm starting to feel nervous? So then I can maybe have a plan. And I also really enjoy the trauma reaction cards, because they're broken down into body reactions, brain and thinking reactions, behaviors, and feelings. And so often we can't articulate those things, but when you can look and see that a kid is saying like they feel like they're not doing anything right, or they spark really meaningful conversations and help you problem solve, especially when kids just don't want to talk. A lot of times kids don't want to talk to an adult because they're afraid of feeling their emotions on top of their own. And so it's a great way for parents to kind of take a deep breath and catch their own calm, and then look at the cards and be able to come back to them later so that they can problem solve at a better time. Okay, so any ideas on easy ways? I couldn't read the rest of it.
Any ideas on easy ways teachers could use something within a classroom setting?
Yes. So I think in a lot of the calm corners, it's really helpful. Whenever I have card decks, I always go through and take out depending on the age. And, for the younger kids, you're going to want even pictures. But just even having little things where they can come up later and put on your desk these cards. This is what I'm thinking. This is what I'm feeling. I don't want to talk about it, but now you know, and I can let that out and not be carrying it all day. I love this board game. Mark, you're going to know what it is. It has all the body emotion boards, the physical sensations, and then so many cards where you can show your whole world. I think like preschool age kids, having these in the classroom are awesome. Like I said, having some values cards, making your own, what things help my worries get bigger, smaller for kids that tend to be really easily overwhelmed. I think, things, how can I decide if, this is a false alarm or not? So tailoring them for certain people, but also just having general cards, and in particular, these mindfulness ones. If they're having a moment, do I need to let my brain calm down in this way? A lot of the cards even feel nice to the touch. And I love the fact that they can put them out and show you, or they could walk up and put them face down on a teacher's desk. This is how I'm feeling, but I still get to feel safe. And other kids don't have to hear what I'm talking about, and I can still get this off my chest, because when we ignore this stuff, our body sends scary feelings and we have symptoms, headaches, stomach aches, and we can get really scared. But if we can at least get it out, it's such a great start to not letting things build to the point where we feel like we're completely out of control. Does that answer your question at all, Corey?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Questions specific to, or if you know that when you're going to, say, a sports practice, your kids typically, their anxiety skyrockets. It's like, okay, let's not let it take us by surprise. Let's know that it's there to tell us that we care about this. And yes, our body has more adrenaline and it feels intense, but it's just actually trying to help us. So changing your relationship and having just a couple notes. Like I said, too many it doesn't work. But everybody has different fears and everybody has different ways that they do feel better. And I love for kids to be able to even have a card. I like to laminate them because you can use a dry erase marker for what is needed in that moment. Like, I want to feel seen and heard, but I don't want you to ask any questions. So it could be like, ask questions, sit by you, problem solve, and they can just circle. Because so many times we want to problem solve and they just want someone to listen and help absorb the emotional intensity. And when you look at how our brains are designed, we are designed to help each other carry that emotional load. When we're carrying it all on our own is when things get really murky and we feel really down. So being able to circle what is needed in that moment is also very helpful. So those are some other examples.
I really love this for thinking about even like special needs kids or on the spectrum, and they aren't able to verbalize or identify those feelings and to be able to share them carefully.
And there's so much shame when you feel like you're alone and you can't find the words and it's just frustration, and then everything keeps growing. So to break it down and truly everyone, when their brain has been hijacked, is almost functioning like someone with special needs because you're not able to access that. And I think when we really understand from a neuroscience perspective that that's what happens to our brain, it's a lot easier to get on board with helping in a way that doesn't create more stress for everyone, because those battles are so easy to fall into, even as a clinician. I know sometimes I'm like, wait, what am I doing? This is not helpful. So anybody else?
I actually just had a comment. So my daughter sees Karen and we used the cards. I don't remember what set it was, but it really helped open up, like she said, kind of open up her world to us, because like it's hard for them to find the words or explain or where do I start. And so once she picked out all the cards, it was like amazing how clearly you could see how she was feeling. So I think that's a really good tool.
Thank you. And it's a great way to assess progress. You can assess progress. It's a great way for people to know they're not alone. It's a safe way to show the inside and to help people understand that, everybody just shows the outside, but everyone walking around has their own card deck that could show all of these things that they're feeling. And that's why, there are so many. So.
Are there a specific brand or like a specific one that you recommend?
So if I was only going to get one thing, it would definitely be, it's that CBT game where it has like 500 different decks of cards. However, I really, really like the trauma reaction cards on Amazon because I love that they break those down into behaviors, brain and thinking, body reactions and feelings, and they're very affordable. So I've donated a lot of those to different teachers, and then I still would laminate those. And you pick out the ones that maybe wouldn't be appropriate just for the calm corner, but maybe some that might want to go into the therapist's office. So I would say that game and that one are two for sure. And even with older kids, I love doing, this is animal apocotherapy, where it just like opens up these amazing conversations because it doesn't feel so, we're sitting here and so vulnerable, kind of the way when you're driving in the car, it's better to have a conversation. When you can have a conversation with cards, it feels safer and less vulnerable, and you end up sharing a lot more. Another game that I would say I highly recommend is this Mindfulness Matters game. It's growing that muscle, the calm, and saying, hey, these are ways we can practice this in bite-sized ways. And I also think it's important to teach kids that there's no big, huge change that happens overnight. That it's these tiny little steps that end up making something really huge happen. And we forget to think about that. So on one card before bed, I say, what are 3 things I actually did well today? Let's strengthen those neuronal networks. What are 3 things that and then kids start to list things off and you're like, oh my gosh, you didn't tell me that. That's a huge you just put yourself out there and it wouldn't have come up, and we wouldn't have been able to really, the experience is creating the neuronal network, but the conversation is enhancing it. And so it's just giving it more life. So, you know, it can be used to get our brain to work at its best and to help us rewire the parts that aren't helpful and strengthen the parts that we want, and to be able to use, you know, all of the parts together, because that's when we do best. When we're stuck stuck back here or just in the emotional side, it's really hard to feel good about ourselves. So I would say all of those, and I will send out a list because I find that cards can be just used. They're so much more fun. Kids enjoy them, parents, the adults are always shocked when I ask them, okay, can you tell me how this feels? Like, I don't know, but then they can lay out 100 cards and it's like, okay, here we go. And they just are thinking, well, I just thought I wasn't normal. I thought something was wrong with me. I didn't realize that this is a normal reaction to something that's traumatic. And this is how my body was trying to keep me safe. And you can kind of move on and free yourself from those negative beliefs. I mean, I love the Virginia Satir quote, we prefer the misery of certainty more than the misery of uncertainty. And so once you identify something, you can work on it. But when you don't, you keep repeating patterns, but it's not your fault, because that's how our brain works. So really getting rid of that guilt and shame of this is just our brain. But the coolest part is we can rewire it. We can rebuild it in a way that works best for us. And it doesn't mean hard things aren't going to happen, but it just means we'll be more prepared, and using that also to show that, you know, I haven't met anybody that is really interesting to be around that hasn't gone through things. That's what makes us who we are. And it allows that conversation for why mistakes are so necessary and all the type things that can grow your brain. So I know that with my oldest, who's more perfectionistic, I ask him like 2 little mistakes he made, and we celebrate that. You know, what did you learn from that? Because, you know, we're supposed to make mistakes. And I think a lot of times we focus on even what went well, but mistakes have a lot of room to teach us important information and really help us grow. And to share your own stories. I think when people realize adults have these feelings too, it's almost like coping out loud or talking out loud, or I wonder, it looks like, that's kind of how the cards work. And so I love that it can be something that they can even put out and say, I don't feel like talking about, but this is just where I'm at. Or it can be something where you have a big conversation, even conversation cards at the dinner. I mean, you can use cards in a way that doesn't always have to be related to, you know, reducing the emotions or reducing emotional intensity. They can be used in a proactive way too, to build other things or to just create connection, meaningful connection. So I think those are awesome. And even to have your kids say, why don't you make a card for what you think I might need, you know? Or for that kid that really is hurting your feelings. Like, I wonder what, if he had, these are the things that I'm struggling with, what they would look like. And then on the outside, how he behaves. Okay, so he makes fun of others when he's feeling insecure. You know, just to step outside of yourself and realize that there's always a bigger picture. It's so easy to feel like you're the problem and the only one. And so they just allow for so many meaningful conversations. Any other questions? I know we're about out of time, but I don't want to not give you over. I'm sorry. Like I said, I could talk for hours and days.
I love it.
If you have follow-up questions, please email them. I'm more than happy to send like more examples of how I've done things or great places to find these resources. I think it's all about sharing, and the more we can educate one another and create a common language, the more we help our kids, because it takes a village for a reason. And I think that as neuroscience is showing, and as we saw from the pandemic, connection is needed now more than ever. And anything that helps normalize things and not make you feel like an outsider is just a beautiful thing. The little things that keep adding up. So.
Well, thank you, Karen. That was
You're
very
welcome.
Informative and just.
I feel like it was a session that was on overdrive, but it's a lot to into a little tiny bit. So
It was great. I love also that, it's an option for all ages, even us. Definitely creates such a sense of hope. This was very informative. So I really appreciate you and your time.
Anytime.
And
Thank you all for everything and for being open to helping catch up with all these kiddos. It's going to take us all. So I appreciate and I'm honored, and I want to reiterate that this is Mental Health Awareness Month, and say thank you to Touchpoints for really looking for things that are just meant to help the world. And that's one of the things that has drawn me to this company the most, especially Mark. It's his heart is like radiates so big, and it's all about authentic. He's driven by just real things, and I think that the company is as well, and they have worked wonders for so many of my clients and been lifesavers, and even my kids. Actually, everyone in his house has their own pair.
I love it. Oh, well, thank you. Thank you to everyone for joining. Hope you found this webinar just as valuable as I did, and that you'll explore both touch points and the use of menus. I think will be very beneficial, not only for your kiddos, for those that you work with, but for yourself as well. I want to say, just go ahead and check your email. We're going to be announcing the winner for the set of touch points that we're giving away from the attendees of this webinar. We're also going to be providing an exclusive discount for anyone who wants to take advantage of that and share with others, as well as sharing additional resources. So you'll see those links to the recommended card decks that Karen had shared, along with some other helpful blog posts, some great videos. And for those that missed this webinar, we're going to be posting it on YouTube. So that link will also be provided, and you'll be able to share with anyone who couldn't join today.
And if you have any questions about, I didn't get to go into as much as I wanted to about using the touch points with these various things, but it's such a powerful way to enhance building these neuronal networks. And kids get so excited when they realize that we have neuroplasticity and we can actually change. And so when we tell them that, it's just even more powerful. And I have not had a person not love touch points. I think you guys reached out to me because so many people, I was getting 500 million of them all the time because they just work, and neuroscience makes sense as to why they work. So if anyone has questions, I just can't speak more highly of a product. It's saved a lot of my clients' lives. And probably saved me from a couple of mental breakdowns because we're all humans, right? I tell people I only see normal people, and I'm normal, and I'm a hot mess.
Yes, and that's all of us.
Yes. So.
Oh, well, this has been great. Thank you so much. I hope everyone has a beautiful Friday. It's Mental Health Awareness Month, so let's keep prioritizing mental health. Let's show love. Let's spread love. Let's really help each other. So that's all I have to say. Thank you, guys. We'll be in touch.
Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, guys.